Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
It's John Pollock and Wai Ting, the Kenny Omega and Swerve Strickland of post-wrestling.
Who's Kenny and who's Swerve?
I think it's pretty obvious, right?
Who do you see yourself as?
I see myself as well, tonight, you know what? With some of the comedy, I think most people would assign Kenny Omega to me based on some of his terrible one-liners tonight.
Right, okay. I'll gladly be the Swerve of the duel. Sure.
I'm going to just start it off with the hot take right out of the gate. I don't know if I've ever seen someone have such a great match and such a bad promo on one show. Like, they could not be further apart from one another. I thought his segment with MJF, I thought Kenny, this is like a fine, hey, we're going to wrestle on Collision promo, not we're going to headline the next pay-per-view together. I just thought it was Kenny in his sarcastic, bad joke delivery that I find sometimes he just gets caught in, and I was not a big fan of that promo. But the match was great.
I mean, I don't know if there's a different Kenny to that Kenny, though. That's just kind of who he is.
The guy has cut very good promos. Now, they're usually in Japan, but he has cut very good promos. I just found it was just we're coming off some of these segments with Roman and Punk, and that's my direct comparison. And I just felt like that setup to this pay-per-view, it could not be further from building up.
I don't want to break down the segment before we break down the segment, but
just kidding, everyone.
How much comedy did you take offense to in the promo?
I just thought it was just Kenny that was just he was just trying to be so witty to MJF, and he's just making all these
what, the excuse my smell, I just had a match, what's your excuse?
I mean, that was the start of it, and then you call yourself the devil.
That wasn't so much comedy. That was
I agree, it was not comedy. I don't know what it was intended to be.
It was an attempt to frame the match as the devil versus the god of pro wrestling.
Yeah, it was just...
Which is like a poster tagline.
Okay, we'll get to it shortly, but did not get a big kick out of it.
Okay.
But we had...
Stay tuned,
folks. The Roy Wilkins Auditorium was home here to Dynamite in St. Paul, Minnesota, 3,512. They were here exactly a year ago, and the difference in tickets was about 60 difference, so pretty much a wash. Taz is on commentary tonight with Excalibur and Tony Schiavone, and we're starting off with Omega and Swerve Strickland. Tony Schiavone stating unprecedented stakes for a wrestling match. Unprecedented.
I mean, they've done EVP. Wait, have they? I guess they haven't, right? Because we are reminded that
you could lose your EVP status, but not putting the EVP status on the winner. I guess
there has never been a number one contender versus EVP match before in the history of AEW or possibly pro wrestling.
Yes, it's wringing all the water out of that unprecedented towel, but Tony Schiavone managed it. So we start off, and early on, Swerve is placed on a chair on the floor, and Omega hits a V-trigger, and then one to the back of the head inside of the ring, and he's going for an avalanche, one-winged angel, which Swerve was able to avoid. And as Omega proceeds with snapdragons, Taz starts breaking down the technique and admits he catches himself. I know I'm really getting in the weeds here. I was like, no, keep going, Taz. We're enjoying this. And then he tries for one on the edge of the apron, but Swerve grabs hold of Aubrey Edwards and kicks Kenny low. And Schiavone, Aubrey's being very lenient here. He just grabbed the referee here to set up a low blow spot. But playoff season is beginning. And then they get on top of the guardrail and they lose balance and they have to reset as Swerve hits a pile driver, follows with a Swerve stomp, then goes for another into the ring, and it's Swerve pointing the handgun at Omega's head. and Omega catches him with a knee, lands the V-trigger, and we get a battle back and forth of One Winged Angel versus Vertebreaker, ending with the Vertebreaker being hit, but Omega gets the shoulder up, moves out of the way of another Swerve stomp, and this time V-trigger finally on the third try gets him up for the One Winged Angel and beats Swerve in 20 minutes, 34 seconds to become the number one contender. And still the executive vice president of AEW.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Which, again, I don't know if we've ever seen Kenny exercise those powers in any way. We have no idea what he's actually in charge of, but
maybe he could overrule the no physicality clause for next week's contract signing. Does he have that power at least?
I don't. I think if he was the Bucks, he would, but as Kenny Omega, who's, I guess, much more law-abiding, he probably would not do that.
That's the next storyline. What do you do, Kenny, in this role? What is it that you
Number one
do?
contender versus you tell us what you do as an EVP.
Yeah,
right.
Number one contender versus FAQ.
That's it.
Do you have an office?
This was, I thought, a very good match, of course. It's Swerve and it's Kenny Omega. Very good athleticism, very good action. I will say, to me, unprecedentedness of the stipulation aside, I do feel like of course, there's a higher level that I would expect these two to get to if this was a pay-per-view. For a TV match, it was I would say above the standard of an AEW, even high-level TV match. But the booking to me made it seem like they only made Swerve number one contender just to jump Kenny in front of the line for a title shot at the pay-per-view, would you suggest? Because the last time Kenny had a singles match, he lost to Andrade, and certainly hasn't racked up the number of wins that, either like Kyle Fletcher or who else was it? Darby Allin has this year. So this felt like just maybe their way of fast-tracking Kenny to a title shot.
Yeah, I mean, you've got sort of the, they're now even at one win apiece. That by AEW standards, they can probably go to this in like 2.5 years, and they will reference the March 25th, 2026 edition of Dynamite, the last time that they met. It's...
What'd you think of the match?
I like the match a lot. I didn't think it was... I didn't think it surpassed their last TV match that I think was above this one as well. Perhaps part of that, like, I don't know how much the... Like, it's very predictable that they would have started the show with this, but it almost felt like the crowd was like almost expecting like this was going to be the big main event, and they were getting it right away for it as well. So I mean, I thought it was very, very strong overall, but I thought the segment with Max was the more important one of like making this feel like a big title match for Dynasty. Which, I mean, this is going to be it's going to be a very high standard of match that those two have to achieve.
Which made sense why they put this ahead. So,
yeah,
I mean, number one, because you're getting the most viewers of the entire show at the beginning anyway, but also so that you could do the rest of your Kenny, funny comedy lines later on in the show.
For St. Paul, yes. I mean, on Dynamite, like the main event slot is the opening, basically. It's like the quote-unquote main event at the end of the show is usually your number 2 match of the night. So
on this episode, I don't even know if you would call it like Darby.
Well, they kind of made it the number 2 match by default because we got a no countout stipulation added. So Ospreay is backstage. Presumably, this was taped last week because he was not here, and he addresses Pac. Says that you said when you shook my hand for the first time, you knew I was a prick, but I've never shaken your hand. It's like, ooh, what an origin story. I really want to see when these first two men met or did not meet. He thanks Jon Moxley because when he put him out of action, I got to bond with my child, but I will never forgive you for the fear you put into my child when I was injured. I am going to alter your life, and said that I want to face you at Dynasty. And to get ready, he wants to face Pac in Winnipeg next week. So we have got, after the Blake Christian warm-up, we will get Pac next week and then the Moxley match on April 12th.
That is a big match for Winnipeg, and I mean, I know it's Dynamite, so like they can do this really anywhere, but yeah, I wonder if like, I don't know. I just don't, I like, has Winnipeg seen, like what's been the biggest match in Winnipeg?
Nick Bockwinkel defending the AWA championship.
Like that's really big. So, I thought Osprey here sounded really nice and really serious here. A lot more serious and intense than usual. Certainly no comedy at all in this one. And I thought he conveyed his reasons for hating Jon Moxley really well. This to me was like the type of promo that like took us right back into remembering what a jerk Jon Moxley and the Death Riders have been. And it almost makes you completely forget about like the Moxley babyface turn, which I kind of think they want you to, in order to resume this feud that's going on.
Added late today, Moxley, Daniel Garcia, and Marina Shafir against Top Flight and Zeta Steel, with Top Flight hailing from Minnesota. And it's a brawl at the beginning. Moxley stomps Darius, and Darius comes back with a big drop kick. Top Flight are double teaming him, and we get a triple dive spot from Steel and Top Flight. Then they switch roles, and they get the advantage on Dante. And this was a commercial break, so Taz explained to us why in judo you refer to them as players, because judo is a sport and you play a sport.
Yeah. I'm never really one to complain about like explanations that are like for the layman, but like I think Taz really overdoes it. Like he makes things sound complicated that really aren't complicated at all. Like even explaining the Snapdragon, like all he's really saying is Kenny's got a low arch versus somebody who typically has a high arch. And like, he talks about it as like, I don't want to get into the weeds too much. I don't want to like, confuse you guys. Or I don't want to like, talk about things that only maybe like, high level analysts like myself may understand. Like, I think Taz.
Hey, you simpletons out there that are drunk watching these guys drop on their heads. Let me explain wrestling to you. Could you imagine Bully Ray on commentary here?
Whereas like a Bryan Danielson, which is like he'll just tell you what it is, and assuming that it's not too complicated, which it is not.
So the crowd starts chanting 612, booyaka booyaka 612 for Top Flight. Dante then turns and he nails Shafir with this big leaping kick that they explain. Well, he thought that was Moxley, so Steel is in. Steel looked like good for the brief time that she was in here. And let it be known, Zeta Steel, 2 years Julia Hart's junior, by the way.
Wow.
Yes.
Do we know who is the youngest person right now? Is it still Nick Wayne? Is it Nick Wayne at all?
I don't think it is Nick Wayne. Zeta Steel would certainly be on the list. I don't know.
How old is she?
She is 22. Oh no, it is Nick Wayne. You're right. Nick Wayne is 20. I don't know if anyone is under 20, if we're not including Brody Jr.
Okay.
So then we get a big fuck you Yuta chant, and then Steel avoids a doomsday as Moxley gets knocked off balance on the turnbuckle, and Yuta gets yanked off the apron by Christopher Daniels, and Yuta nails him with a Busaiku knee. Steel takes out Yuta with a dive, and it's Garcia placing the Dragon Tamer onto Darius, and he is put unconscious with the stomp from Moxley as Garcia switches to the cover, 11 minutes and 3 seconds. I thought this match really over-delivered in the sense that, yes, this was going to be a Death Riders TV win, but I thought the crowd really got into Top Flight. I thought Zeta Steel got a bit of a showcase on the main show, and I thought this turned into a really entertaining match when it could have very easily just have been, a Death Riders showcase, and it really got elevated, I thought, especially once they got behind Dante and Darius in a big way.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, Top Flight certainly aren't people I would expect to be effective in a position like this as baby faces, but I mean St. Paul truly loves them, and
it worked really well.
You're giving them you're giving the hometown a team to cheer for, and they did love them. Just on Zeta Steel, I mean I thought she looked tremendous too. It's probably no easy feat to share the ring with Top Flight, who are spectacular workers, but I thought she held her own really well, especially against Marina Shafir. But to me, this is like, I've been enjoying the Jon Moxley babyface run, and I've been enjoying even the babyface teases of the rest of the Death Riders, but I like them way more as heels, especially in ring, where they at this point in their run, they have got their sort of like gimmick in these sort of squash matches, especially, down so well. They look so mean and like such great bullies, and Marina Shafir completely, included in all of that as well. So this was a match that I think, was made to further establish the Death Riders as heels for this Ospreay feud by beating up these hometown guys. And I thought it was very effective.
Yeah, and they didn't overdo like the intergender stuff, but the brief spots they did, like the crowd responds to that stuff. Like it works really well, and I felt like they didn't like rely on that, but they threw in a couple of spots in there as well. Moxley gets onto the microphone, responds to Ospreay, saying, "This isn't even personal," and he accepts the grudge match for Dynasty and warns Will not to let his mouth get him into trouble.
Yeah, this John Moxley, like 2026, late 2025 to 2026 is going to be really interesting to study, because he's going back and forth between being a babyface and heel, like depending on the season, and it all still makes sense because he's just sort of a dickish anti-hero by nature, but I think he is doing it incredibly well.
He's like Dr. Robbie on the Pit.
Exactly.
That's a reference for you. The Young Bucks cut a promo. They're going for the tag belts this year. It doesn't matter who gets in their way. So this is a long road back to the tag titles. They're starting at square one. It's going to be, QT Marshall and company first. I think they're just going to go through every combination till we get to All In.
I'm guessing, yeah. I'm guessing.
Another addition to the show, Speedball Mike Bailey and Rocky Romero. Very quick match. Romero mocks his Taekwondo style, and they're really putting over his recent streak, with exception to the loss to Kyle Fletcher recently. But he hits the triangle moonsault. Tornado kick gets stopped when Rocky goes to the eyes, and then Speedball recovers. Tornado kick, ultimate weapon, and wins in 2 minutes and 44 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, they essentially gave Speedball a squash match here. And for a guy like Speedball size, that's not that usual. But they are building him up for a Kenny match. So they need to put some steam behind him.
Yeah, and you've kind of got this subplot to the AEW title scene of, you've got Darby and Speedball, who they're kind of explaining are on these streaks at this moment as well. Yeah. So you're keeping them at least in the hunt as well for that title scene.
They also talked about the Josh Alexander injury here, and how Rocky was, I guess, very ineffectively trying to get some semblance of revenge because the injury did take place with the Speedball.
Did you see that match on Saturday?
I saw the spot.
Or Sunday. It was bizarre because they're calling it at the time, but there's no reference to it, and Josh just disappears in the match. Like it just becomes a 3-on-2 match, and you never hear anything more about Alexander or anything like that. MJF kicks off the second hour, mocks the Minnesotans with their accent, and he is the man who hanged the hangman, the man who will never, ever, ever, ever be world champion again, and says how Paige didn't even put up much of a fight. It was the easiest match of my career. And then he just goes into full rock mode here, stating that no one is on the level of the devil. And that prompts Kenny Omega to come down and enters the ring as they cite their previous match when these two had a showdown on an episode of Collision 2.5 years ago. And now it is time for the rematch. And Omega says that, pardon me for my attire and my smell. I just had a match. What's your excuse? Right out of the old My Way video package for Mania 17. I remember this line.
Well, Steve Austin would have to say
smell
something.
what you're reeking of, Steve.
Okay.
We were not getting off to a great start here. But he then explains how, with all of his nicknames, even at the height of my bad guyness, I never called myself a god. And you call yourself a devil. You place yourself on a pedestal. And if that's what it takes to beat the devil, then I will be a god. The god of professional wrestling. And when they told me a few years ago to take time off, I didn't listen because I felt a duty to the fans. And I was 60 to 80% when I lost to you last time. And I learned a lesson losing to Swerve, that it's all about what happens around the ring. Back there. I don't know what back there means for the EVP, but he's now learning the political game in this industry that he has occupied for a couple decades. But no more bullshit hijinks from MJF, he declares, and says, let's find out who the better man is at Dynasty. As he puts out his hand, MJF is just sweating away here in the corner, and I think some of his bronzer was falling onto the mat. And he agrees to the match, but turns down the handshake and just walks out and leaves.
So I felt this was like a relatively pedestrian standard sort of face-to-face segment. I guess I like even in the recap, I didn't really have any sort of like guttural, even negative reaction to it. I thought it was perfectly
My pushback
fine.
was more so on just the demeanor of Kenny Omega and just all of his delivery of this. It just felt like a guy that was just like trying to perform and get like a kick out of everybody as he was doing this. I just didn't take it. It to me was just like a not serious Kenny Omega. That was my problem with the segment. Maybe I'm alone.
I guess I didn't take that away from Kenny. Like this felt like Kenny, babyface Kenny as usual. Like nothing he said here felt like he was joking around too much. Other than that first, like I'm sorry, I smell. What's your excuse?
Well, there was
line.
that. There was it was yep. This was our set.
It gets the visual out there of seeing these two face to face. They likely want to announce the card as soon as, or the headliner as soon as possible. Kenny Omega wrestling in the main event of a pay per view in Canada, Western Canada at that. I think is a big deal. And I think it's a big test for Kenny. It's his first singles pay per view match since Okada at All In, and I would argue like he says it in character. I have to imagine it might be the case in real life. Like he could be healthier. I would imagine. I would hope he's healthier now than he was back then, and he seems to be in very good shape from these appearances. So I feel like there's a different level of expectation for Kenny this time around. And of course he's going up against MJF, who's one of the very best. So it's, to me, our chance to see where he's truly at, perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean, you have the segment next week. They're doing the contract signing next week in Winnipeg, and then you only have like one more week, and then it's the pay-per-view. It's not like they have an extended period to build this one up. It's like right around the corner. And
thus the need for a segment like this on the same show that he earned the
title I think you had to come out of this show. And we have like the top 3 matches now for the show with FTR against Copeland and Cage, Osprey and Moxley, and then this is your top 3 matches. And about 15 more to come.
Yeah.
Renee spoke to Copeland and Christian earlier today. Christian says how FTR chose to turn on Copeland. You chose to pile drive Beth, but even worse, you chose to pile drive me. And he walks off. And Copeland calls him an asshole. But FTR are bigger assholes. And so Copeland says, let me talk to you guys. Zoom in right into my nose hairs. And he says, Dan, I met you at Gold's Gym in 2009, and you've thrown our friendship away. And you pile drove Beth, a woman whose cooking you've eaten. Our children go to school together. I wonder if they share the same daycare, and I hope that their funds are being processed properly. You threw all that away. I'm going to find you. It's like they couldn't have been too far. They were in this building. I'm going to find you and end your careers.
Yeah.
So he's coming for death in Vancouver. Christian just wants to win.
Well, he wants to end their careers, not necessarily kill them. Maybe break their neck or something. Yeah. I really feel like they're trying to resuscitate an angle that I think has long been flatlined. And at this point, all the sting of like the Beth attack is just completely gone. Even if now we have the knowledge that Cash.
Do we see Beth in a segment before the pay-per-view?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Why not? Or maybe she shows up at the match itself. I mean,
how about a home invasion? Do we have time for a home invasion?
I don't know. Maybe
imagine FTR go to invade the home. And like that SmackDown segment, Copeland goes to call them to go check on the house as they're invading.
Oh, I think the kids should cut promos on each other at school.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
We've established kids in the schoolyard. We do a segment at the schoolyard. Yeah. My dad's better than your dad. Yeah. Oh, yeah? Look at that stupid shirt that your dad wears. My dad's merch is so much better.
So it's not like they should forget what happened to Beth, but I do think they need like a new layer on top of it to really refresh this and to make it hot again, because it really feels like the absence has completely cooled it down.
FTR and Stoke come out, and Cash gets his rebuttal here. He says, we chose to drop the dead weight, and we weren't going to carry your carcass over the finish line of your career or live in your shadow. We take a back seat to no one. And yeah, I lived in your guest house, but it isn't 2009 anymore. What a shot at Randy. And he doesn't need him anymore. This is my family. I don't need your wife. I don't need your stupid kids. And then Dax gets on the mic and calls Copeland a shell of his former self, a nostalgia act. And the fans and their boss both know it. But so do you, Cope. You love your wife, but by us attacking her, it made you question if this is all worth it. And what do you think we're going to do to you if that's what we would do to Beth? And with that, Orange Cassidy walks out for his match, and him and Roderick get into a shoving match with FTR. So they will probably get some kind of a beatdown at some point.
I imagine FTR versus Orange and Strong before Dynasty.
That feels like a collision match.
Collision, yeah, sure. Yeah. Mm.
So we go into Cassidy and Roderick Strong against David Finlay and Clark Connors. Excalibur says, Taz, in your many travels, I'm sure you're familiar with Finlay. I was like, Taz is like, yeah, I worked with the guy for like a decade in WWE. I'm familiar. And he explains that David Finlay cannot respect his father because his father didn't become a world champion. And Taz reacts to this. If my son said that to me, you know what? He couldn't say that to me. So that was the ultimate Taz response. He's like, can't say that to me. I was a world champion.
Yeah.
So not a problem between Taz and Hook at the dinner table. Strong gets knocked off the apron, so they double team Cassidy. He comes back with a stun dog, and Strong starts using Orange Cassidy as a weapon. I think this is the new go-to spot for the can they get along teammates. It's just use each other as weapons.
Yeah. It's often done with like a team consisting of like a larger person and a smaller person. I feel like Roderick Strong is either the same size or even maybe slightly smaller than Orange Cassidy. So it looks like Strong.
That's what makes it.
It looks like Strong has like a hell of a time. Like he's incredible. Of course, like it's in his name. He's incredibly strong. But it looks like it's a lot more difficult for him to do.
Imagine Spike doing this to Bubba.
Yeah.
So from there we get double DDT off the top onto Finlay and Connors, and then we get Cassidy is yanked to the floor, and Finlay tackles Strong. They do a high-low, and Cassidy makes the comeback, but Connors ducks the orange punch and hits a chop. Finlay hits a chop block, and they introduce their new finisher, the full clip, as Connors pins Cassidy in 10 minutes and 49 seconds after Strong was disposed of. The full clip.
I mean, the full clip is more, I think, of a callback to the Bullet Club. You figured they'd have something more dog-related for a finisher.
Yeah, like the full bowl or
full bowl. Yeah, like kibbles and bits. Or like,
is this a dogs match or is this a Kenny Omega pay-per-view promo?
I don't know. I vote for a more dog-related pun. Okay, that they should name this finisher too. But otherwise, a really good high-paced tag match. I think the dogs are doing really well in AEW from an in-ring perspective. And like this is they lost the Darby Allin feud. I would say at this point, like Kid is gone. They lost the tag match on pay-per-view, but at least they got a win here against the conglomeration.
After that, we went to the Divine Dominion, and Willow and Harley were full of false confidence. They mocked the former champions. There are no second chances, just another fatality. So we have a rematch on Collision for the tag titles where one team will die. It's a final fatality match.
A final fatality. Okay. Maybe they could fight in the pit, huh? There's a reference for you.
I love it. That's where SmackDown's going to be on Friday, the pit.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Many pits reference on this podcast.
Everything ties together.
Yeah. I think Lena Cross sounds really comfortable in this setting on the microphone. She, to me, on the mic, in what little I've heard of her, already seems more developed as a voice than Megan Bayne does. At least she sounds more confident in her voice than Megan Bayne does, in my opinion. But I mean, they look like they're incredibly strong heel champions to build a division around. So I wonder if they are a group that like will just exist as this, or if Ford will come back perhaps as a mouthpiece of some sort, or if they might invite anybody else, maybe just even a proper manager to join them. Because, I mean, two like tall women, having somebody shorter attached to them would really emphasize that height.
Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to think.
Like if Stokely wasn't tied up in FTR, I feel like, I like somebody like him would be great,
Kyle Fletcher is in the back, and he beat Robbie Eagles Saturday. He's going to become the greatest TNT champion ever. It's like, I would think he's pretty high at this point. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to do as TNT champion if I'm Kyle Fletcher, but he's still on the ascent, he says. He is undefeated in singles matches this year. Again, I hearken back to this. I love that they have you have your number one contender, but then you have all these people still gunning for this. It's like you've got all these streaks that they're establishing now for all these various guys. And here's the third.
So the rankings do still exist.
They do in Tony Khan's mind.
As long as you're undefeated, then they exist.
Yes. Yeah. You could granted, they would get fact checked, but I wonder how they could just throw these things out and how long until
they just have to seem believable.
He hasn't lost a singles match in 14 years. He says that he thinks it's bullshit that Kenny Omega is leapfrogging everybody. He's an EVP, Kyle, and he says he is not happy about this business relationship the Don Callis family have forged with MJF because we should be bringing the title to the Don Callis family, and I am the one to do it. So he then brings in Takeshita, noting, I know you don't get along with Okada, but he says that nothing should ever get between them. Not Okada, and the fact that Proto Shida came first. And the two men hug. Wonderful feel-good moment.
Sure. But anytime you see two people in a heel faction hug, some shit's about to go down, right?
So Kyle's going to give him a screwdriver to the head at some point.
Feels like we are setting up a Kyle turn on Takeshita coming off of this, perhaps. But yeah, interesting to see, Fletcher is also throwing his hat in there to want a challenge for the world championship, and thereby, he's directly referencing not liking MJF. So expect that match in the future.
Thekla against Mina Shirakawa for the women's championship. There's a draping DDT by Mina onto the floor, and then Mina yells that she's fighting for Toni Storm, and I fight for myself. It's like, you got to pick one. Thekla drops her with his double stomp, mocks her dance. That part was great. She puts her in a Rings of Saturn, and then she starts just laying on the mat like Toni Storm does. I thought Thekla was just great here. Does the spider walk, but the spear misses, and Mina fires up, sling blade, and this missile drop kick that sent Thekla flying in the ring. She gets caught in a half crab, reaches the rope, and then Thekla goes for the spear but can't go for the cover, takes off her belt, and the referee takes the belt and is distracted for, I would say, 45 minutes with his back turned. As Thekla brings out the brass knuckles, Mina ducks, hits the Hurricane, lifts up Thekla for a suplex, and Thekla just waffles her with the knuckles and covers her. Just this official just couldn't look dumber here. 10 minutes, 42 seconds as Thekla retains, and Mina goes back to her slotted position that was briefly interrupted for a week after a win.
Yeah, well, good match. I really like Shirakawa's intensity here. It felt heightened, to a different level in this match. I feel like the finish, in a way, like using the brass knuckles, somewhat protects Mina, who, I fully would have expected to just lose clean in a match like this. So it does open the path for her to complain and maybe get a rematch in the future, but maybe something tells me that might not happen. So I watch all this and I wonder, I guess Mina had to win last week in order for Thekla to have this match against her.
Mm-hmm.
But Shafir losing did feel like unusual booking to me. So I guess in my mind, I'm just trying to piece together what the original plan and what the original booking was supposed to be. It was supposed to be Tony versus Shafir.
Right, with the no holds barred stipulation. Well, I don't think it was necessarily to set up a women's title match the next week. I wouldn't have seen Shafir or Toni Storm on a week's notice going for the belt. So I think this was just a direct result. We gave a big win to Mina, and she loses to Thekla.
So what was it really worth, having Mina win, even if it was just sort of a second option, just to have one match against Thekla on the next Dynamite?
I mean, it's sometimes just the rule of thumb that you put the replacement over and give the feel good win.
Why wouldn't you have Shafir win? so that you could build to something bigger with Shafir who'd be able to benefit more from it.
I mean, maybe they feel like with that loss, there's a reason now to do Shafir getting her win back, and it means something more with Mina. And it's like you're down Toni Storm, put Mina over, and maybe the hope is that they get something here out of Mina and get her some kind of elevation out of this. Like I do think Shafir probably gets that win back at some time.
Yeah, I guess if they are looking to elevate Mina, like I don't think this really achieved it. Like a 1 week sort of like high of beating Shafir only to lose to Thekla, unless they are building to a rematch for later, like immediately with Thekla and Mina.
Maybe that will be where they go. Maybe Dynasty, they do the rematch between them, and that's where they go.
They're also doing the secret admirer thing still with Mina Shirakawa, which was her storyline, prior to the Toni thing. But because now we have a mystery attacker angle attached to Toni Storm, of which Mina Shirakawa, I think you could look at as like one of the top suspects. You kind of have like one mystery layered on top of another mystery angle.
Love it. Not enough mysteries in pro wrestling.
Not enough hooded men. Yes. Mm.
Renee speaks with Kenny and announces you have a contract signing next week, but no physicality. And Kenny, the chicanery, skullduggery, and tomfoolery.
See, this is a segment
MJF.
you could criticize.
He says, it's my time, and I am going to be the one to take the title. And in comes Speedball Mike Bailey. I'm like, God damn it, Way's going to have called this one. But not quite. He enters. He admires Kenny. He hopes he wins the title at Dynasty, and I will be there for the first title shot after. I was like, this is actually, like, I really thought they were going to do this one in Winnipeg before, but, I mean, if you're Mike Bailey, this is a smarter play. Why would I want to beat this guy before he wins the title? I want the match after he wins the belt. And after all this stuff about all these guys want title shots, Bailey just pretty much negotiated his title shot right here. He beat everyone on this night.
He's banking on Kenny beating MJF, though.
I guess so. Yeah, MJF has.
If he doesn't win, then if he doesn't win, then he doesn't get a title shot. So, like,
how about the Canadian content here on our screen?
Lovely, absolutely lovely. 3 fine Canadians on screen here. So what is this? Like, are we?
This was an extended handshake, is what we got at the end of this. They just neither would stop shaking each other's hand.
Well, they do both have roots in DDT, so they're throwing a bit of comedy in there. You can't blame them too much for that. But like, when are we actually going to get Kenny versus Speedball? Because I mean, it's certainly not a sure thing that Kenny beats MJF. But yet you've established a sort of expectation for Kenny versus Speedball at some point.
Yeah, I would have wanted to do this on one of the Canadian shows, but I mean, it's not like you have to do this in Canada. It's like whatever. I think it's a match you get to at some point, but I'm certainly not leaning towards seeing a title change at Dynasty. So
3 weeks, even like, so like Speedball is basically challenging him for what, at least like 3 weeks, if not longer down the road, right? And that feels like a long build for Kenny Omega versus Speedball when like this could be a match that they could have just, done next week. So I wonder what really is at play here.
I mean, if you wanted to do it, like he comes up short against MJF and he comes out and says, I need to build myself back up and I want to face somebody that is going to push me to the limit. And it's a great opportunity that you could have like Omega's reeling after this big loss to MJF and you could give like a big win here to Bailey on TV or something like that. I'm sure we are going to get this match at some point.
You think Kenny wrestles? Well, okay, so Kenny has several challengers actually coming up, but how often do you think Kenny wrestles before MJF?
If it's not Winnipeg, I wouldn't.
Well, Ricochet basically challenged him.
Right.
Segment.
Yeah, which I guess, you could do the Wednesday before. I would just like, if you're going to do a Kenny match, why not do that in Winnipeg?
Contract signing, man.
You can do the contract signing the next week. The contract can be done.
We also don't know how much recovery time Kenny Omega needs.
Well, I don't. If you're doing this match with Max, I don't know if like putting him out there for like a 20-minute match on the Wednesday before would be the most ideal. But yeah, they have teased a lot here with Kenny. Maybe he's just going to work every TV from now until Dynasty. So yeah, the demand. This started off. This could not have been coincidental. Ricochet says, I need to issue an apology. I lost my cool the last time I was here. And he's referring to the backstage segment where he was upset about the Blackjack Battle Royal and apologizes to Khan and Toa, but says, I was never beaten for the belt. I'm tired of Kenny getting special treatment. I should be the one challenging for the AEW title. And so, yeah, you have put Ricochet into the mix here as well.
Yeah. Like he specifically said he's tired of Kenny, so and reminded him that he beat Kenny in their first singles match together. So This seems to line out a direct challenge to Kenny Omega, one that doesn't necessarily require the championship. So I could see this match taking place before the MJF match as one final way to like push Kenny Omega to the top. But if you're Kenny, why would you take this match if you already have a title shot? Anyway,
you know what? The next week they're in Edmonton.
Okay. So wait, when are they in Edmonton?
They're in Edmonton for the go home show before Dynasty.
So Winnipeg and then Edmonton.
Winnipeg, then Edmonton.
Okay.
And then it's the pay-per-view. So, I mean, it's possible. Like Rogers Place, that's a big arena. It's in Canada. That could very well be. I could see Ricochet being the match as the setup, and Bailey is something further past the pay-per-view.
All right.
So they have lined up a lot. Collision on Saturday, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Do you see Kenny wrestling in Cedar Rapids, Iowa this weekend?
Maybe an appearance.
Not at the Alliant Energy Powerhouse, which is the name of the venue.
You know, I don't know. Maybe.
The answer is no. So it's we have the women's tag title match and Tommaso Ciampa against Ace Austin. And then next week on Dynamite, Ospreay against Pac and the no physicality contract signing. Roosh and Darby Allin, no countouts. And they're in the main event. So what could happen? Roosh just jumps him at the bell, knocks him off the buckle, and my God, Darby is just throwing all over this arena. They mentioned that Darby has now won 6 singles matches in a row. And with that, this line could not even get out quick enough before Darby is whipped into the steps and he flies over these stairs into the guardrail. And it was just an incredible amount of speed that this man launched over these steps and into the rail. Darby gets back, goes for a tope suicida, and crashes into the floor. And with this, reopens a wound from last week's casket match to the death. So he is bleeding, and not an insignificant amount either. There was quite a bit going here. But then, this crowd, it's the main event, and they realize, where in God's name is Brody King? And so they surveyed. They're like, you know what? No restrictions, no borders to this match. Fuck ice. And we probably had the loudest fuck ice chants, at least the most sustained fuck ice chants, because they were deafening here. And this crowd was not letting through. And think about it. They didn't get Brody King and they didn't get Don Callis. And this was their realization. We are not getting either of the prompts for the chant. So we are getting this chant on and representing Minnesota.
Yeah, I think if there was any sort of like more clear indication that like, you know, these fuck ice chants aren't necessarily something AEW is actively encouraging. If it wasn't already obvious enough from maybe, you know, the prior weeks of booking, it's the fact that Brody King wasn't on the show in Minnesota, you know,
yes,
that I think might have told you something. So they're letting it play out as these crowds want to cheer, and they're certainly not like censoring them. In fact, like the announcers almost like, I don't know if they were shocked, but like they certainly weren't talking over it. So like, you know, they kind of let the crowd have their voice. And I thought for a second this crowd would have chanted "fuck ice" throughout this entire main event.
They were like,
they were ready. They had the energy for it, certainly.
Yes. Yeah,
but
these were loud.
But the action, of course, like, you know, like eventually got them to focus on, because this was quite the match. If this was a bad match, like if this was like Randy Orton, Sheamus, you know, from like that Raw after WrestleMania, there would have been fuck ice chants for the entire duration of this match.
Hey, how about we watch the match?
Yeah.
Huh? Darby takes this belly to belly off the apron. Usually this would be like the craziest spot of the match. This one was like number 6 of this match. The ice chants resume. Roosh does the tranquilo pose and Darby just leaps on top of him. And God bless Tony Schiavone trying to work in a mention here. They're plugging Collision, And this was such an obvious Tony Khan in his ear moment because Shivani like cuts off Excalibur to explain that Tommaso Ciampa eliminated Ace Austin in the Blackjack Battle Royal for the reason that they're having this match. And Excalibur's just like, dude, we got the match to call here. We don't have time for this. Yes, Ace Austin got eliminated. So,
by the way, what was the reason for Roosh and Darby Allin?
Well, this was the Don Callis family. I don't know. What was the explanation for this?
Did they explain on Collision or something?
I mean, they had Andrade paid off. Did they enlist Roosh?
I don't. I
mean, this is basically just announced.
Chat room, let us know. Because like I was like, okay, yeah, like, this looks like a really fun match, but like I don't exactly know what the backstory is.
Well,
why we're doing it.
It's another obstacle for Darby Allin. That's what this was. It was a car. Last week you got the literal car crash. This week you got the figurative one. Okay, that's the reason. Shivani, plugs the collision show, and then Darby lands a tope and does the missile drop kick to Roosh in a chair on the floor. Code red, belly to belly, sends Darby into the corner, and then after an elbow smash, goes for the bull's horns, misses, and Darby catches him with a jackknife cover, pinning Roosh, and now he has 7 wins in a row.
A very strong, very hard-hitting match, with the usual level of risk you would expect out of a Darby Allin match.
This was one of Roosh's best performances. I thought he was awesome in this match. He had a great opponent for his type of style, and Roosh is great in these brawls where it really does feel like the limitations are off, and I thought these two I thought this was great.
Roosh is just he's great at being a dickish bully, right? And when you have the ultimate victim to bully in Darby Allin, I mean, it makes for a really great combination. I guess I just wish if there was, a reason for it, I wish it would have been a little bit more built up and a little bit deeper to make me really invested in the story. So on the surface though, they made what was a match that didn't have that much of a build feel like it was a lot more personal, just strictly based off of the really high quality action alone.
I mean, at the end of it, it's Darby is on this streak, and
that's the only reason. Darby gets another win, basically.
The Don Callis family come out and attack him with Mark Davis hitting with a pile driver on the floor, and Andrade is conflicted here as he is at the front, and Lance Archer chokeslams Darby, ending the show with Davis, Archer, Trent, and Rocky Romero in the ring. And I guess this is they really do love this guy's going to go through the entire group stories, and Darby seems to find himself in a lot of these. He's conquered the Death Riders. Now it's on to the Don Callis family that will keep him busy for 14 pay-per-views.
Well, you have a lot of TV, and
you do. And Lance Archer is a human to go through.
That's right. So you have a lot of people now that are in the sort of path towards the title, right? Kyle Fletcher has been bragging about an undefeated streak. You got Darby, you got Speedball, who wants to oppose Kenny Omega first or after. Kenny, of course, earning his title shot here, and somewhere in there you've got Andrade and you've got Swerve, probably still lingering. So a lot of names.
So much that you could go to in this main event scene.
Yeah. So much so that Ospreay can be off on his own thing, doing his own thing with Jon Moxley, and it's a very deep roster. But I think they continue to do a good job of telling the audience who to focus on for the title picture.
Yes. So I thought that this was really heightened by the bookend matches of the show with Omega and Swerve, and with Roosh and Darby Allin. That 6-person really over delivered for me. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
It
just feels like this is a real quick turnaround. I can't say I am antsy for the next AEW pay-per-view in 2 weeks time. This kind of feels like you're going out to a really expensive steakhouse and you feel it for the next 2 days afterwards. It's expensive and it weighs on you for a long time. And now it's we're going back in 2 weeks time for another all-you-can-eat buffet.
Mm-hmm. Your interest will be dependent on, I think, seeing a Will Ospreay wrestle a pay-per-view match for the first time in a long time, seeing a Kenny Omega wrestle a singles pay-per-view match for the first time in a very long time, and Cope and Cage. So those 3 attractions alone feel like they're different enough from what took place in the pay-per-view prior. And And, like it's already a very stacked lineup, just even based off of those 3 matches. Jon Moxley versus Ospreay, MJF and Omega, FTR versus Cope and Cage.
All right, everybody. We are going to say goodbye, but want to make mention that we have Thursday, a pair of shows coming your way for Double Double and Espresso members. PostWrestlingCafe.com. Thursday marks 25 years since the final edition of Monday Nitro, and we are going to be reviewing on Book Club Beyond Nitro by Guy Evans. So that is coming your way. Double Double and Espresso members of the Cafe. Then Thursday night, I am back here on the YouTube channel. Pollock and Thurston. We are going to be talking about the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act with John Nash from Hey Not the Face. We're going to be talking about AEW All In's first ticket estimate. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this insane story of daycare and WWE tickets. Lots of other topics as well. NXT moving its whole library to YouTube. A lot of stories to cover on Pollock and Thurston. And Wai is back on Friday evening with Rewind-A-SmackDown, him and Neil Flanagan, covering SmackDown from The Pit.
Right, yeah.
The Pit featuring Kit.
Yeah, will Noah Wiley be there?
You could only be so lucky. I mean, he's very pro-union, so I don't know if he would endorse WWE. Saturday, I'm going to be doing a show on the Cafe covering TNA Sacrifice, which is happening Friday night. So we'll have a show for you coming up on Saturday. And then Collision Course is back to its usual Saturday night slot with Wai Ting, no less, joining Kate from Montreal on Saturday. Wai immediately put his name down for the Cedar Rapids, Iowa edition because you know what? Ciampa, Ace Austin, so many questions left unanswered from the Blackjack Battle Royal.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Looking forward to chatting about, catching up on AEW with Kate. And also wanted to mention the return of MCU Later coming this Friday following the release of Daredevil, Born Again Season 2. So those guys will be talking about that.
Might be watching it tonight.
Oh, so of course it's out already.
It's up on
right?
Disney Plus, yes.
Amazing.
First episode is up. So
nice.
I will be catching it at some point. So
did you watch the Spider-Man trailer?
No, I didn't. Was it good?
It was really great. And I imagine Chris and Rich and WH will be talking about that as well.
Okay, well, folks, you will be all caught up to date on MCU Later. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody on the YouTube channel. The real fun happens now for the XL version at forum.postwrestling.com. Bye, YouTube.